What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today, as promised in the previous hero guide, we are going to be going over a complete hero guide for Iden Versio. This one has been a long time coming, like I said, and as for the next one, I'm hoping to get a Lando guide out there next, and then after that we actually only have the 2 droids left until I've covered each and every hero, so we're not too far away and I cannot wait to get this series all tied up. In these hero guides, we're going to be covering everything you could possibly need covering, from base stats, ability stats, the best star cards for Galactic Assault and Supremacy, as well as some of the best maps to choose them on, some general tips for those game modes, the best star cards for Heroes vs Villains and Hero Showdown, which enemy characters you need to look out for, and then lastly covering some general tips for the hero game modes as well. So as you can see, this guide is going to be breaking down every single aspect of the hero. If you're new around here and you end up enjoying this video, then do consider subscribing to the channel for more Battlefront 2 content, and be sure to hit that notification bell as well so that you are notified each time I upload more videos like this going forward. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's get stuck right into it. So getting into Iden's base stats, and she does have some of the better stats out there for a blaster user, nothing crazy or anything like that, but overall her stats are definitely up towards the top. Starting off with her base HP, she has 650, which is the average for most blaster users, and as for how much health she can regenerate at once, she can regen up to 200 HP, which again is on par with most other blaster heroes in the game. In terms of her damage, her blaster deals 10 damage to the body at range and 20 damage up close, and to the head it deals 19 damage at range and 38 damage up close. She then also has her alternate fire with the left trigger, and this one deals 150 damage at all ranges. There's absolutely no drop off at all with this one, and obviously it has splash damage as well, so you don't even actually need to hit the enemy with it, just landing it close enough to them will actually just result in 150 damage. Her rate of fire is 780 shots per minute, which is definitely up there towards the top in comparison to all the other blaster heroes in the game. To be honest, it's actually slightly less than I expected, but it is still very fast nonetheless. She can fire 56 shots before the blaster overheats, and as for the spread, it's pretty tight and it does actually tighten as you fire, pretty similar to Phasma's, so the more you shoot the better the aim becomes, and overall because of that she is fairly accurate, especially considering the rate of fire. Now moving on to her abilities, and she does have some pretty solid abilities, definitely not the best in the game, but I think they all serve a pretty good purpose and they do shape her playstyle pretty well. Her left ability is her stun droid, and as the name suggests, this one just causes Dio to stun nearby enemies. The stun lasts for 1.5 seconds, and if there are multiple enemies near the initially stunned target, it will actually bounce to those enemies as well, stunning multiple people at once. It has a 20-second cooldown, which is definitely pretty good considering how useful and, to be honest, frustrating this ability can be, especially in Heroes vs Villains. Moving on, we have her middle ability, and this one is her pulse cannon, and this allows Iden to pull out a pulse cannon that is completely separate from her TL50. Unscoped, it deals 35 to 40 damage to the body depending on the range, and 63 to 76 damage to the head. However, when it's scoped in and charged up, which is just done by holding the trigger, it'll deal 207 damage to the body and a whopping 376 damage to the head at long range, but that damage does actually drop the closer you get, so this is definitely best to be used at long range. On top of all of that, this one actually has no cooldown. You can essentially just equip or unequip it as often as you want. Now for her right ability, we have the droid shield, and this is exactly what it sounds, causing Dio to provide a bubble shield for Iden. It can take roughly 750 damage before breaking, which is pretty decent, and it will last for 12 seconds before automatically ending. This one has a crazy fast 10-second cooldown, which, considering how much it can save your life, is a very powerful cooldown time. So that is it for all of her base stats and abilities, and now we're going to be moving on to some tips for Galactic Assault and Supremacy, starting off with her best star cards. Keep in mind, these cards are just a matter of opinion. There aren't really any loadouts in the game that are objectively the best or anything like that, but these are just what I find to work best in these game modes. The first card I'd recommend is the Alternative Methods card, and this one just allows Iden to be able to use her alternate fire up to 25% more often, which really allows you to send damage downrange super fast, and considering it is a one-hit kill on most troopers, this one is a must-have card. The second card I'd recommend is the Droid Batteries card, and this one makes it so that both Stun Droid and Droid Shield have faster cooldown times by up to 25%, meaning the stun will cool down in 15 seconds and the shield in 7.5 seconds. So again, this one is fairly self-explanatory. Both of those abilities can be lifesavers, so using them more often is always a good thing. The third card I'd recommend is the Cooled Blaster card, and this one just causes Iden's TL50 to build less heat when firing, or in layman's terms, you just have more ammo before needing to reload. Not that that's really how it works in Star Wars. This does apply to her alternate fire too, and I believe this one ends up allowing for 1 extra shot before cooling down, so it seems pretty insignificant, but it can actually help snag a few extra kills, and to be honest, most of her cards just aren't all that great, so this one is definitely one of the next best behind the first two. Now moving on to the best maps to choose her on in Galactic Assault, the 3 maps that I personally think she's the best on are Camino, Crate and Naboo. All of these maps see you as the attacking team, and obviously it is just much easier playing on offense, especially with a blaster hero, but they all lend themselves really well to her playstyle as well, having the ability to fight at pretty much all types of ranges, from chaotic close quarters sections to those more sort of open long range gunfights, and Iden has something for all of those situations, so she really does well on pretty much all of these maps. Now moving on to some general tips for Galactic Assault and Supremacy, and as I just mentioned, one of Iden's biggest strengths is probably the fact that she can do really well no matter what range she's fighting at. If you guys watched my Bossk hero guide, then this is fairly similar to what I mentioned for Bossk, as he has the potential to do really well at pretty much all ranges, and even Leia to some extent, so some of my most recent guides have actually touched on a fairly similar point. Any hero in the game who can do well at all ranges is going to have a pretty big advantage, especially in the trooper game modes, simply because those characters don't have nearly as many weak spots as the rest of the heroes in the game. For example, if you find yourself in a long range gunfight on, say, Hoth or Geonosis, then for most other blaster heroes you might need to get out of that gunfight and sort of relocate. However, with Iden you can actually just counter those enemies with your pulse cannon, which is essentially going to beat any weapon in the game at long range. On the opposite side of that, if you're in a really close quarter situation defending an objective or something like that, well, you're still going to be able to handle that situation really well with the TL50, and especially with the alternate fire mode, and I would definitely take Iden over a bunch of troopers in that situation as well. Being multifaceted like that can be a really strong advantage in Battlefront 2 because, like I said, it sort of just reduces your weaknesses, and it means you don't need to rely quite as much on your positioning and having to make sure that you're in certain areas on the map, because you can kind of do well from any area, and that gives you one less thing to stress about, meaning you can sort of focus more on getting kills and winning the game, rather than having to always worry about just simply staying alive. So really the only tip I can give for Iden in these modes is just to get as much practice as you can and sort of know when and where to use each specific weapon or ability, get the hang of all of her different strengths, and try to become a really good all-round hero rather than only using her alternate fire or only sitting back sniping with the pulse cannon. To summarise, Iden is great at all ranges if you can manage to use each weapon and ability in the right situations, so simply put in the time and learn from your mistakes and try to learn what is the best time and place to use each ability in order to make yourself even stronger in each of those different situations. So moving on now to the hero versus villain game modes, and she is actually a beast in these modes. I personally think she's one of, if not the single best blaster hero in the game in these modes, and you could mount a case that she's literally the best overall hero including saber heroes, so you should definitely be able to do very well with her. Starting off with her star cards, and the first card that I would recommend is the alternative methods card that I mentioned earlier, allowing her to use alternate fire more often. Now this can obviously deal damage through blocks because of the splash damage, and therefore it is amazing against saber heroes, so the more you can use it the better off you'll be. The second card I'd recommend is the droid batteries card. Once again, this one just speaks for itself. If you can stun enemies and use your shield more often, you're simply going to be better off in these modes, so again this one is a no-brainer. Now the third card I'd recommend is the acquiring targets card, and this one makes it so that the stun droid ability actually has a larger area of effect when searching for viable targets, pretty much meaning you can be further away from an enemy and still be able to stun them. Her stun is super OP in these modes, to be honest, especially with that crazy cooldown time, so being able to use it from even further away really helps with taking out those saber heroes who are trying to close ground. Now as for the heroes that you need to look out for, the only two that I think are really an issue are Luke and Anakin. Their ragdoll abilities can get very painful, and they both just deal damage so fast that you can sometimes struggle to 1v1 them if they're a good player, but they're both obviously beatable if you do play your cards right. Now finally moving on to just some regular tips for these hero game modes, and like I said for Leia in the last guide, I think Iden might be one of the simplest heroes in these modes. All you need to do is just send as much damage down range as humanly possible. Like I said, her alternate fire will deal damage through saber blocks, so that obviously gives you a huge advantage over saber heroes, and if you do start to damage them and they decide to rush you, you can simply just use a stun droid to stun them, at which point you have essentially just won the battle. I'm honestly not even sure what else to say for this section. I'd love to give some extra tips and tricks, but honestly her playstyle just kind of speaks for itself. She's easily one of the better, more damaging blaster heroes in these modes, and if you simply send a ton of damage down range at all times and combine that well with your abilities, well, you're going to be very hard to stop. So that is going to do it for this one, guys. As always, a massive thank you to my channel members and my patrons for the continued support. If you guys are interested in supporting the channel as well, then be sure to check out the Patreon page that's linked down in the description. If you enjoyed the video and it did end up helping you guys out, then be sure to leave a like down below to support the channel, and be sure to subscribe with those notifications on so you don't miss out on any more Star Wars Battlefront 2 content. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Crush them! Make them suffer!